What's up, guys? It's been a long time since I made a video, so I'll try to make a video every 1 day or 2 days. So today I'll just go over the Shirov variation and the Caro defense, and let's see what happens. After e4, we play c6, d4, d5, and e5, bishop to f5. This is the starting position of the advanced variation of the Caro defense, and the Shirov variation is a very aggressive line where white tries to harass black's light squared bishop on f5 with moves such as g4 and h4, and they also have intentions of putting a lot of pressure on black's king side. Um, However, with every flank operation, we're gonna meet this by countering in the center, and black's gonna do this with his main pawn break, which is c5. So let's take a look. After e6, white's gonna play g4, right? Because there isn't any other moves that make sense, because this move knight to c3 in itself is anti-positional, because white is blocking his c2 pawn, so after c5 he won't be able to support this pawn on d4. So if he does something anti-positional like this, he's gonna have to create a lot of activity to compensate for this. So they're gonna play g4. Sorry about that. It's not g3. g4. We're gonna retreat, and now not h4. They're gonna play knight to e2 because they're pretty sneaky. They want to get in another tempo with h4, forcing us to move our h pawn, then knight to f4, gaining another tempo, putting the knight on a super aggressive square. So let's go c5, attack white in the center. They don't want to take, right? Because now it's just two weak pawns, one on c5, one on e5, and sometime later maybe we can play knight to c6, play d4, play queen to d5, take control of this really long diagonal. White can't castle kingside anymore, and our queen's nicely centralized, so it's not going to be good for white. So they're not going to take it. They're going to play h4. They're going to threaten to win this bishop on g6, and we're going to have to respond in some way, right? There are two options. We can either play h5 or we can play h6. Now, generally in advanced variations, whenever white plays h4 or f4, we're going to play h5 just to control the light squares on the king side. And what we're doing with h5 I mean, is we're preventing white from gaining control over f5 with the pawn, so that later we can place a piece on f5, either the bishop or the knight. So in this position, we're going to play h5, just challenging white's control over the light squares. White's going to continue with knight to f4, and in this position we only have one move, bishop to h7, because you can't really let this capture happen on g6, because okay, knight takes g6, f takes g6, bishop to d3, and then black's completely busted. Let's see what I mean by this. Let's give a random move to black, right? Let's just say bishop to e7, attacking this pawn. Okay, knight takes g6. We take with the f pawn. Now bishop to d3. Okay, what are we gonna do? Take this pawn on h4. Okay, bishop takes g6. Okay, let's go king d. No, we can't go d7 because this bishop on h4 is hanging. Let's go to d7. Okay, now they can even take on h5. In this position, black is just completely busted. His king's in the center. He can't develop his pieces really well, and he's gonna have a lot of trouble, right? So let's not go down that path. Okay, in this position, black's gonna play bishop to h7, and sacrificing this pawn on h5 is absolutely justifiable, because if white ever takes this pawn in h5, what he's doing is he's spending 3 moves on the same piece in the opening phase of the game. Now we all know that in the opening phase we need to mobilize our forces just like in the actual war. Material doesn't matter. Uh, it's the amount of forces which you mobilize which really matters. So if knight takes h5, black's gonna have a lot of compensation. We can start off by playing either knight to c6 or just taking on d4, and white has a lot of pressure to deal with on the central dark squares, right? So let's take a look. If white takes this pawn on h5, so let's take on d4. If queen takes, let's just go knight to c6. If bishop to b5 pinning, we just go knight to e7. If another pin happens, we don't care. We continue with our plan and exchange. After knight to c6, they can't take it, because after knight takes to d4, c2 is hanging, d8 is hanging, white can resign. That's unacceptable for white. So after knight takes c6, they're gonna retreat the queen. Let's say queen to f4, and now queen to a5. Black's already threatening to play d4 and win this knight on c3. So I don't think okay, if white even tries to castle queenside, I mean, we can put a rook on c8, play b5, kick the knight away, gain a lot of tempos. They're gonna have trouble defending the a2 pawn. Bishop b4 is gonna come. We can always retreat with the queen just to attack this pawn on e5. This knight on h5 is misplaced. Black is just doing completely fine. So that's what happens if white takes this pawn. Okay. They can play knight to b5 in this position, but we just go knight to c6 if they take. Knight to e7, we want to exchange on d4 and then play knight to c6, gain another tempo, maybe follow up with queen to c7, attack e5. There's weak pawns all over the joint. c2 will fall soon, e5 is probably going to fall soon, and kingside weaknesses means that white can't really castle kingside, and if they castle queenside, well, black has the advantage on the queenside because they can just play moves such as rook to c8 again, queen to a5, push the b pawn, and white's just gonna have a lot of pressure to deal with. So taking the pawn isn't a really practical option. So are there any other moves that white can play in this position? Well, they can release the tension, but I don't really like this move because it's just giving white 2 weaknesses in the center. Weakness on e5, weakness on c5. Let's go back. I forgot to show you something which is really interesting. After bishop to h7, knight takes h5, and if we play knight to c6, bishop to b5, knight to e7, white has this really interesting move, bishop to h6, and if you take on h6, it's checkmate on f6, which is just a terrible way to lose a game, right? Checkmate with knight. If this happens, your best option is just take on d4, and after queen takes, you can play queen to c7, attacking this pawn on e5, and if knight takes, we just go king to d8, and this is really funny because now this bishop on h6 is actually pinned, and I mean the knight's pinned, and it can't really move because the bishop will hang. So yeah, that's that. Let's take a quick look at the other options for white. If they play d takes c5, let's go a takes g4, and if queen takes, well, this pawn in c2 is already hanging, and we can snap it off right away. This pawn in c5 is already hanging. We can even just play knight to c6, attack e5. Just look at this position. Black is like completely okay in this position because of the weak pawns in white's camp. So if white plays g5, just gaining more space on the king side, and releasing the tension, we can just continue with knight to c6. Okay, I think this video is already going a bit too long. I should just tell you your main plans, right? Well, let's take a look at the weak squares. F5's weak. Maybe someday you can put a knight on f5 and increase the pressure on d4. Maybe you can play queen to b6 to put more pressure on d4. Sometimes knight to b4 is going to be a trick because you can land a fork on the king and the knight and the rook. I'm sorry. Black has the advantage on the queen side of the board, and he generally wants to seek his counterplay on the queen side and also in the center. Well, yeah, you're not really looking to castle anytime soon in this position. You're just looking to improve your pieces, put more pressure on white center, and the anti-positional move. The drawbacks of the anti-positional move knight to c3 will show sooner or later as white's unable to support this pawn on d4. And white's not really going to castle. Well, they have drawbacks of castling either way because let's say they castle kingside. This pawn on h4 is going to be extremely weak. Knight f5 is going to just really annoy white. If they somehow happen to castle on the queen side, then a huge pawn storm is going to happen with a6, b5, maybe b4, rook to c8, queen to a5. Those are just the standard attacking moves, and yeah, that's all I have to share with you right now. Thank you all for watching, and if you have any questions, just post them in the comments below. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.